Chapter 12. Keith Dunstan stood in the black layer of the Queen. The air was moist and hot. Somewhere water dripped, and somewhere else it flowed. He was surrounded by soft clicking and chittering, like fingernails tapping upon glass, or impossible creatures rustling in the dark. He knew which it was. He also knew it was a dream. He held his hands up in front of his face and counted his fingers. He breathed slowly and evenly. The trick was one he had used before, and in his subconscious wanderings it had always placed him in control. Of course, this was different. This was not of his own mind. But command of the transmission was not necessary, merely command of himself. A huge shadow shifted in front of him, moved closer. He could just make out her shape. Taller than the earth breed, longer, more powerful, and sturdy. "Come to me." The voice in his mind was inflected with great love and longing. His brain translated her need into something he would understand, would know, had known before. He closed his eyes and concentrated on a response, as he had done before, always to no avail. Perhaps this time. "Where are you? I must find you." "Come to me. I love you. I am waiting." "Yes. Are there others?" Dunstan waited, eyes closed. The sounds of the alien breed moving intensified, filled the air. All around him now they moved closer. Her children. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, answered his questions only with their shifting, sliding, greasy motions, making noises like some insane hybrid of locust and wild plains animal. The dream was different from before, more vivid. He sensed the texture of the nest's floor beneath his feet, felt the heat emanating from the alien construct around him. The smell was overwhelming, rot and decay and vomit and a bathroom with a bad chemical recycler. Even so, the emotional impact of the Queen's desire was far greater. It would overwhelm him were he to open himself to it. The mother's love enshrouded him, tried to enter him with all the subtlety of a rapist. Dunstan raised his hands in front of his chest and placed his palms together, index fingers extended. The first of the 9 kanji, of Kujikiri, Tu-mo, the channel of control. The Queen beckoned, a repeated cycle of need, as Dunstan calmed his heart and mind with the simple gestures. Stillness now. Motion. Action. Those would come later. In the dreams, there was time to be still. Falk was in the hot, stuffy shithole where she and her offspring dwelled. The fucking Queen. He had been here before, but this time was different somehow. It looked the same, what he could see of it, but it was more. The air was dank, sweaty, warm glue against his face. It was all alive, the place, the weird moving noises, like he was standing in the belly of some huge beast. He waited, full of anger and dread, for her to speak. "Come to me." The hulking darkness in front of him moved, started forward. He raised his arms, hands clenched, and waited for her to come closer. He wanted to destroy, to rip her fucking head off and dance on her bones. Her children had taken Marla away. Falk felt sadness splash over him, felt it engulf him in its flow, like a dark and lonely tide. These brainless, giant fucking insects had ripped his life apart, had made the universe smaller and colder. Why Marla? Why? "I understand." The voice in his head was simple and calm, full of strength. Not the Queen, not the whispery, strange, androgynous sound of the Queen. He lowered his hands, suddenly unsure. "Marla," he said. His voice was thick and quavering, swallowed in the muggy air. It was impossible. "I love you." It was her, the lilt of it familiar and emotional, with that husky undertone he thought he'd never hear again. He tried to step forward, but his feet wouldn't move. He looked around wildly, but he couldn't see in the murky darkness, couldn't see if maybe Marla had somehow made it to this hellish place. "Come to me. I'm waiting." Falk suddenly realized that he wasn't hearing the words aloud. They were in his mind only, and that his mind was where Marla existed, and nowhere else. The message was the Queen's. It was a trick. For 1 minute he had actually hoped. His grief and confusion dissipated, were replaced by a searing anger so great that his whole body shook. Everything was tinted red. The blackness rippled and flowed with the new heat of the colour. Falk drew in breath to scream, to cry, to vent his fury and seal the Queen's fate. And all of it disappeared and went grey. Charlene Adcock stood in the Queen's steamy chamber and tried to damp down her fear. She was scared, but being scared, she admonished herself, shouldn't stop one from getting things done. Her mother had told her that many times, and she believed it still. Although her psych visits with Dr. Torchin had helped her see that she had suppressed her emotions, was cut off from her feelings. It wasn't important now. She took in her surroundings, careful not to let any details slip by. The place she was in was like a sauna, but the heat was wet and foul, the warmth of rot. It was dark, the only light coming from a few cracks in the roof of the nest, far above. There were sounds of water and movement around her, but it was centered behind and to the left, and again beyond her, past where the darkness was thicker. "I need you. I love you." The Queen moved forward, her words echoing in Adcox's mind. With it, as before, came hints of other things, information that was not human. Tangential reference points, telemetry data, star charts seen with tunneled vision and delivered with the strength of utter supremacy and purpose. It was all much clearer now. Adcox could feel the emotional force that the Queen radiated, but was not pulled by it. The love was huge, but impersonal. Her own thoughts were stronger, controllable in the chaos of feelings. "I wait for you." When the Queen spoke, Adcox got a sense of where she was, a curving roundness in water. The design was alien, complex but organic. Somewhere. The lieutenant concentrated, tried to force the image into geographical planes, but it wouldn't come. The beckoning was meant for different instincts than she could claim, terrifying in its insane pattern. Suddenly the Queen stepped even closer, close enough for Adcox to reach out and touch. Her attempts to put aside her fear vanished. "This isn't supposed to happen!" Adcox screamed, any illusion of control gone, as the Queen lifted a wormy, clawed hand to stroke her.